What's up, everyone? Back for another beer review, and today is another installment of Macro Monday here on the channel, where I review a beer from a macro brewery or a macro-esque beer from a craft brewery. And the beer that I am reviewing today comes from Desnoes Geddes Limited, and they are under the HEINEKEN umbrella, and they are headquartered in Kingston, Jamaica, and this is their Red Stripe. So they're calling this one a Jamaican Lager beer that comes in at 4.7% alcohol by volume, 23 IBUs at the time of review. I don't know exactly how old this bottle is, but it does have a best by date of October 4th of 2024. We're about 7 months away from that date, so we should be more than good to go. So Red Stripe, I'm sure a lot of you out there have had Red Stripe before. I've had it a couple times, but never in a setting like this, sitting down and reviewing the beer and kind of breaking it down and picking it apart and whatnot. Usually when you have this beer, it's in warmer weather, whether you're on vacation to, say, Jamaica or another warm weather country or area. Myself, I've had this before, like, I want to say it's like poolside. I've had it once before, maybe by the beach, but that's kind of where you typically drink this beer. You don't drink it in this kind of setting, but I wanted to see what my palate thought about it in this kind of setting. So we're going to review it for Macro Monday, and I'm kind of excited to get into it. So let's crack this one open, get it into the glass, and see what we got going on. I love the stubby bottles, just fantastic. And, you know, of course, the Red Stripe. We'll put it over here like this. So anyway, let's give it a pour and see what we got going on here. So I'll turn it so you can see the pour a little bit better and label out, of course. So, wow, that looks even lighter than I anticipated. Jesus. Yeah, that looks a little bit hard at the end here, but wow. I was, you know, I don't know if I've ever poured Red Stripe into an actual glass, but it's crazy how light this beer looks in the glass. Holy crap. Okay, so that is old school, like fizzy yellow beer, right? That's what that is. That has this very light straw color. Clarity is beautiful. Had about a finger of a bright white, actually somewhat creamy looking head that is now dissipated to about a half finger. Hold it up to the light. Yeah, I mean, there's good carbonation. The clarity is fantastic. It looks exactly how you would want a beer like this to look. I think maybe a little bit lighter than I anticipated, like I said. And again, I don't think I've ever poured this or into a glass. You typically drank it out of the bottle, so I didn't realize how light this beer is. Kind of wild. Let's get a nose. Very slight. It's like a light kind of graininess. There's a little bit of like the sweetness that kind of reminds me of a little bit of like caramel, honey, something of that realm. And I'm not going to BS you. When I was trying to look up the deets on this one, because it's hard to find the IBUs for it, I found a couple places said 23, one place said 10. I went with 23 because that's what it doesn't really matter. But I always put IBUs when I review this. And on their website, they talked about like a very light butterscotch flavor. I could see that. Like I could see me saying butterscotch, but it's more like honey, caramel. It's definitely bready, you know, again, grainy. A very slight like grassy note. Maybe, like there's not much hop character here. It smells like a sweeter macro lager, right? Like American adjunct lager. I don't know if this is actually technically classified as an American adjunct lager. It's not like big on the corn, but it has this grainy, honey, bready kind of thing, which is fine. A little bit of grassiness. Yeah, not much more. It smells fine. Like I've always found this one to be decent, you know, solid, especially if I'm looking for something to just crush. But again, I never sat here, poured in glass, and smelled it, so it's kind of interesting. Let's get into it. Cheers, everyone. You know, like when I reviewed Budweiser recently, and I had a couple people be like, oh, I love Budweiser. And I said, you know, in that review that it's just not for me. There's a finish that kind of is off-putting. Even with, I reviewed recently Kona Brewing Company, their Longboard Island Lager, which not technically a macro beer, but kind of in that vein, because it did taste like a macro lager. It tasted like American adjunct lager. I would much rather have this over those two, if I'm being honest. Like this is very inoffensive, very lightly flavored. It's almost 5%. I could drink a shit ton of these just based off of that for a sip. It's nice. Buying this is like higher side of light, lower side of medium, so it's not like super thin and watery. Has a little bit more heft, a little bit more body to it. The mouthfeel, it's exactly what you'd expect out of this. Very crisp, incredibly clean on the palate. Has a nice moderate carbonation to it. And then the taste, I'm not going to sit here and BS you and pull, 30,000 different tasting notes out of my ass. Up front, a malt sweetness that is more grainy, a touch of breadiness, and a little bit of that like honey sweetness. As it passes through, I get a touch of like an orchard fruit, like a red apple skin, maybe a pear skin, something like that. And then on the finish, it has this very ever so slight grassy, earthy kind of finish. Very dry. This is like full on dry, of maybe a touch of like a mild bitterness. But it's such a clean beer and so easy to drink that it's almost, and I know this sounds bad, but for me, if I go to the macro side of things, if I'm drinking a macro lager, whether, it's a 4.7% Jamaican lager beer, or whether it's like a 4%, American light lager, I want something that is a step up from water, clearly, in terms of flavor, but I don't want it to be offensive. I don't want it to be any kind of off flavor. I don't want something that's going to ruin the beer, like in the finish, like that aforementioned Budweiser. And this is kind of in that realm where it's just like, I could drink many bottles of this, not worry about anything affecting me other than the alcohol in here, and it'd be very refreshing. So, it's 4.7%, you really can't tell, and I think the body is nice for that percentage, sub 5%, and it drinks, like I said, more like lower side of medium body. Super refreshing, super nice. For the style, like, if we're just to say as a whole, like macro lagers, right? I would probably give this somewhere in the, probably like low 4 range, like for what it's supposed to be. Like, I could drink a shit ton of these, and I wouldn't, hate my life doing so. As far as like, and I always rate to personal preference, and it's on the scale of beer as a whole, so keep that in mind. But I think this is pretty solid. Is it my favorite macro? Probably not, but very akin to like Busch, right? Busch beer, Busch lager. It's very inoffensive, very light, and it's a step up from water. And that's what you want. If you're in Jamaica, or you're on the beach or somewhere, and you're on vacation, say, and you want a beer that's refreshing and just you're gonna enjoy, this is it. So, Red Stripe. I am going to give this, I'll go high 3.5, I'll go 3.6 out of 5. I think that's a fair score for what I'm drinking here. It's, not gonna, I don't think wow anybody, but I think it's pretty fucking good. And that's where I'll leave you. 3.6 out of 5. And like I said, if we're going like as far as like all like stylistically macros, it's probably low 4, like maybe like a, even to like a, I'd say like a 4.15, 4.2. Like, it's pretty good. Price by availability, $8.99 a 6-pack here in my neck of the woods in Buffalo, New York. So again, it's a bit cheaper too than some of the other imported beers that you get. And availability is Red Stripe. You see this all over America. They get in a bunch of different countries. I just think at the end of the day, for what it is, it's highly enjoyable. So if you've had this one before, post in the comment section. Let me know what you thought about it. And I forgot to mention it, but I did see, if you're not subscribed to the Treehouse Brewing Company's YouTube channel, highly recommend doing so. Awesome content. And Nate, he did a blind taste test of like Island Lager. So it was this, Land Shark, was it Presidente? There was a couple other ones. I forgot the other two, but this one, like the blind taste test, and he said it was basically inoffensive, clean. He got more of like I think he said like a honey. I got a little bit of honey in here, a little bit bready. I would say more of like a light grain breadiness. I don't get the butterscotch flavor they're talking about. No, I really don't see the butterscotch flavor, but yeah, there is a little bit like a honey bread, like a honey white bread thing going on. So go check out Treehouse's channel. They do a lot of like blind taste tests of like lagers, and they'll sometimes throw in their own beer to, surprise Nate, but it's a lot of fun. But anyway, Red Stripe, if you've had it before, post in the comment section. What do you think about this one? If you've never picked up Red Stripe, give it a go. If you like macro beers, or you like beers that you don't really have to sit and contemplate. And doing this review is kind of fun to sit down. Like I said, I was surprised at how light this beer is in the glass, just because I've never poured it into a glass before, drank it straight from the bottle. So it's like, wow, I did not realize how light it is. And it kind of drinks like that on the palate. Very, very light, but also very inoffensive, and actually pretty damn solid. So appreciate everybody stopping by for another Macro Monday. Check back in about 3 weeks when I do another one. If you have any suggestions, post it in the comment section and I'll try to get to it. Anyway, appreciate it. To the next one. Cheers. Like I said, pretty dry on the palate. This is a sweeter beer up front, right? But that dryness really balances it out. So I think that's another reason why I like this. It doesn't lean too sweet. A lot of times you'll get that like cream corn or like sweet corn character from a lot of like macro beers, and this does not have it. So double cheers.